Now, this is video 23 of the V series, and that has proven to be a good way to title the videos because a lot of people have wanted to look back at various parts of this in sequence, and you can do that by referencing the V number or searching my channel with the letter V. Now, we always have something going on in the shop, but right now we have 3 projects, actually 4 if you count the MV, and we've tried to separate them into what Vlad wanted for the priority. We finished a good chunk of the BMW already. He's already taken that back and started to reassemble a bike. In the next couple of days, we're going to try to finish up the Buell parts. Some of them are ready to be buffed, and we hope to have them all buffed out within the next few days, and he can pick them up. This is the time of year that we wait for. It's spring. The weather's getting nicer by the day. We're finishing up, in the next couple days, we'll be finishing up the Buell project. I don't know what other parts have to come from Italy for the Motor Guzzi project, the MV project. We have the paint for. We got things to do. We got things to buff, things to dry. And we'll be riding every day very, very soon. The weather is really starting to get nice. So this time of year, we try to get 1 bike a day ready. And we've gotten a few of them all set. And the riding season is coming up very soon. It is really exciting. It's a great time to live in this part of the country. In this time of year, nothing is better than having a cup of coffee out on a porch, checking out the flowering trees. Always, always feeding the fish, feeding the birds, checking out all the action. Now, Karen is getting ready to start our farm very soon. She's already got the burpee catalog out. The fish are already out of hibernation. And we've got a couple other little projects planned around the house. One of them is we have this bicycle. That's an ornamental bicycle at the base of the tree. Karen wanted it painted a different color, and the tree is in full bloom. So we're going to be working on that bicycle within the next couple days. So after checking in with Vlad and making sure that I usually send him some pictures of the progress of what's going on, I wanted to make a plan for how I wanted to do today. I wanted to get this tank cover. That's ready to be buffed. And the Motor Guzzi project still waiting for parts to come. And these fairing parts, they're ready to be buffed. And the biggest one, the seat. Now, we had a big repair to do on the seat where there was a crack in the paint, actually. And it took quite a bit of time to get that. The yellow had to be repainted, and we did all the clear over again. So we'll be interested to see how that's going to go. I'll mix up some soapy water and get out some 2000 grit paper, and this usually gets the day going, and while Karen is bringing me down another cup of coffee. Now, on most of the tutorial videos that require some explanation of what's going on, I like to show the first part in real time. Now, this part is in real time. I'm sanding this down with 2000 grit paper. I want to show just how long it takes to get the part relatively flat. Now, if there's no flaws in the part, well, this goes relatively quickly, and I like to go back and forth in different directions. The idea is not to put all the scratches in one direction. If you do some, now here we go in the other direction, and then you can do some of the circular motion. But the one thing you don't want to do is put all the scratches in one direction, because that makes for deeper scratches that take a lot more time with the buffer to get out. And the idea of doing it with 2000 grit paper instead of some kind of rougher paper, the idea is that you spend a little bit more time sanding and a lot less time buffing. Now, this is in real time. I wanted to show how long it took to get that part flat. Now, if there were any flaws in that, I would have to go back and sand until they're all flat. Now, in fast forward, it just gives you some idea of how long it takes to get the whole part flat. But that's the easy part. Then you've got to go back, and at least I do, go back and forth, wiping it down and finding all the little spots that you want to fix along the way. Now, that could be anything from a little paint nub, a piece of dried paint that winds up in a finish, or some other, a little piece of dust. In the summer, it can be a bug. And in the winter, it can be a snowflake. But carefully getting the whole part. And once you have the whole part flat, then you've got to look at it and really spend some time detailing it out, because all of this time is going to make for the buffing going a whole lot faster. And this is the part that just takes a lot of time, the detailing. Find a little flaw, wipe it with a paper towel, find another little spot, a little dull spot, a spot you might have missed in the basic sanding. And every single part I do at the end of when I think it's done sanding, I'll go back and just like I'm doing here, just constantly candling it, hold it up to the fluorescent lights, look for the little flaws, the little mistakes that are in there, and get them out now. And the whole idea is once you get them out, it's so much nicer to get them out before you start with the buffing wheel or with the 8065. Get the parts done before you hit the compound. And here, this is the product I like, 4CR 8065. Put the compound on both parts and on the wheel. Use a new pad, will make it a little bit easier. And this is just time consuming. And there's some parts you can do with the buffer, of course, and there's some parts you've got to do by hand where there's little corners and angles and edges, and you never know where they are until you start buffing them and see that they don't come out shiny. But patience is the name of the game. Now, anybody that's ever worked in my shop knows this is just time-consuming stuff. And a lot of people that want to learn this skill have learned it in my shop, of course, and I've been very happy to pass it on, and of course with the YouTube videos. But it's time-consuming, and in this case, using my knee for a support allows you to put a little more pressure on the buffer. And there's a limited amount you can press down, but the final thing is, and it's always the part that people are mystified by, you got to do the final detail, the corners, the little edges, all the little spots. You've just got to do it by hand. And actually, once a bike is all put together, it's a good idea to just go back over the whole bike by hand with the 8065, and that cleans up any scratches you put on assembling a bike. Now, before I move on to the next part, I want to put this right under fluorescent lights where I can see every little scratch, every little flaw, anything that I want to correct, because right now, while the material is right out on the bench, this is a good time to make any corrections and use a clean microfiber. Now, the tail section on this bike is really a part that I've had to spend a lot of time on. That decal, that horse, I guess it's a horse, is of such, it's like a vinyl sticker, like the Ferrari stickers, where it sticks up about 1/8 of an inch. So I really can't bury it in clear realistically, but I wanted to make it just kind of blend in as good as I can. This part came with a crack in the paint, and what it is, it really wasn't a crack in the paint. There's a little flaw in the carbon fiber that caused it. I repaired that, and we repainted the yellow, and this part is going to be more complex than the first part, because where I have those yellow paint edges, I've got to be real careful not to go grind through them too much. I want to get them smooth, but I don't want to grind down through, because what has already happened, we already have the finish that came from the factory, the finish that Vlad paid somebody else to put on there, and the clear that I've put on there. So we're really getting to the point where there's a lot of clear, and when you make paint too thick, it tends to crack. So I'm really being careful about this part of it, detailing it out. I really took my time. Patience. Patience is always the thing. When you have patience and you're doing this kind of work, in the end, it always pays. While you're doing this and you're thinking, oh boy, I'm spending a lot of time, I could be out riding, I could be doing this or drinking coffee. But in the end, when that part is sitting under the fluorescent lights, all bright and shiny, you kind of just forget about it and it goes away. And you can see I really spent a lot of time down there and a lot of time on that bad paint edge that was on the original part. Now, buffing this part out, this was a very awkward and a very delicate part. And because there's so many mountaintops, there's so many points where if you just hit it with the buffer, even for 1 second too long, you go right through. And then you have a flaw and you've got to repaint the part, especially where these are painted. And any part that's half painted and half carbon fiber is a super pain to do, to get it right and to get all the blends right so you can't feel the paint edges. And this part, this is the third time this part is being refinished. So I know there's a problem, and I don't want to have to put a fourth finish on it if I don't have to. So I really took my time. I'm trying to use my knee for a support. I'm being real careful around that emblem, that horse, and really, really careful around any of the points or the sharp edges. And thank God this is in fast forward, or this would be a 3-hour video. And all of these things, when you can see them in fast forward, they look like you go real quick, especially this part here at the end when you're picking up little flaws, little things that you have to do by hand. And there's always little spots the buffer just won't get into a corner or a point or an angle. And it just, that word patience comes into it again. It just takes time. And until you're satisfied with it, there's no point not even thinking about moving on to the next part till you're happy. Now this tank cover has these very thick EBR, they're vinyl stickers. I tried my best to bury them in clear, but not getting the clear so thick that it turns into decoupage, and then you have that problem with cracking. And that's very, very, very easy to do. It's an easy trap to fall into, to want to bury things in so much clear like decoupage. So I really took my time around these, and thank God for the 10 speed fast forward that I can make this. You can see the whole process. I did this like a checkerboard. I went from one piece to another, divided it up into sections, and constantly wiping it and looking for really deep flaws, because at the end of it I'm going to go and just go back over it again and look for any little spots. Because once this is flat sanded and it's all dull and flat, and I don't have any flaws I have to deal with that are sandable flaws, then the buffing part goes a lot quicker. And I mean, I have done it in the past to where I've tried to save time, and I thought, oh well, I'll just like give this a lick and a promise and then buff it, and then it winds up you're sitting there with the buffer in your arm for 5 extra hours for nothing. It's just the best tip I can ever give anybody. Pay the price with the 2000 grit paper. Get out any flaw. Get out any little imperfection. Anything, whether it's a model plane, a guitar, or in this case, the carbon fiber parts for the Buell. Because this is building a foundation of the house. And then when you have that buffer, especially if you, like in this case, we have so many parts, you're definitely not going to do them in one day. You can't pick unrealistic goals and think you're going to do this whole thing in one day. Or you wind up getting impatient and then you're sorry you didn't take your time. Now here it is. That was just about as close as I could get to what I was hoping for. Now with all the sanding done, and that really was time consuming. A part like this, it looks like it's all big flat parts, but it's not. It's all edges and paint edges and stickers, and it's almost a part that probably would be it would be a lot more difficult if you had a bigger buffer. But the little buffer is good. The bigger buffer I try never to use on these parts because it's just twice as heavy. And it's amazing, this little buffer that Harbor Freight sells, how useful it is. And I've used it even many times, even after the bike is all put together and I just want to refresh the paint on it. I made a video about refreshing the paint on the GS 1100. That was a very popular video. I got a lot of nice comments. But this part of it, the buffing part, if you don't do the sanding correctly, or if you somehow try to cheat the system, this is the part where this just goes on then forever before that paint gets to where I would be happy, where it looks like liquid glass. And it just takes time. There's just no substitute for being willing to pay the price and do this. And you can buy, I know many people, including Glenn, have had the bigger buffers, different equipment, different products, some products that may work better, some that don't work as well. I got some from Dale, I got some from Glenn years ago. And I personally like the 8065 or 8021, depending on, I guess, which is you're in the mood for. The 8021 is a little bit, it cuts a little bit less, but it takes a little bit longer to do the final buffing. And here, once I get to this part where I have to detail it by hand, now the rest of it is just putting a little bit of the 8065, getting in all these corners and edges around the front of that red. You can't do that with a buffer. You just beat the part up. And around those stickers by hand, rub. You've got to know what parts it's just not practical to do with the buffer. And when I got these from Vlad, the yellow parts of this had so many paint flaws in them. They came out real nice now. They look perfect, in fact. Now you can see how deep that carbon is. It looks like it's a foot deep. And boy, the fluorescent lights are shining in that part. And I did my best to get that part to really be a piece of jewelry. We still have the fairings, and we still have 2 big fairings and 1 side fairing, 1 small part. There's actually 3 parts left in this job. But one by one, we're getting them all done, and it's not going to be long before Vlad will be able to pick it up. And I still am not sure what other parts he has for the other jobs, but we got 3 restorations going at once. Oh boy, this was a super long day, and we got the big chunk of the Buell buffed out. I think 1, maybe the most, 2 more days, because we have fairing parts. And all that clear. By letting it dry up those extra days, the buffing out just went absolutely beautiful. And patience always pays. So I hope the information on this whole set of videos is of some use to people that are restoring paint, restoring motorcycles, or just want to learn this skill. A skill that has taken me a lifetime to learn. And I'm more than happy anytime I can pass any of that information on. And especially when I see other people that have painted their motorcycles, their model planes, whatever they were doing, and took advantage of the information I've been able to share, especially painting carbon fiber parts. Boy, is that tricky and is that difficult. And this whole set of videos, we have gone through the whole array of carbon fiber parts. I hope that's useful information for you. And thanks so much for watching.